All right, guys, so today's lesson is about the line of best fit. And it's actually exactly what it sounds like. It is the line that best fits our data. So when I talk about fitting the data, I mean, we want a line that outlines exactly what our data points are on our line plots. So as you see on here, I've got the chart that you should have seen before. If not, make sure you copy it down because you will be able to use it as a reference to help you with your problems. So that's why I've got it copied here. Now let me explain the chart a little bit before we get started because I think that will help you understand it a little bit better. So we've got 3 categories in our chart. We've got shape, center, and variability. So when we're talking about the shape, we are literally talking about the shape that the data makes. Okay, I've got 4 examples here. So we're gonna go through and talk about each one. So if the shape is middle or even, out of these examples, our number 1 is middle or even, which means that all of the data, the majority of the data, is centered around the middle. That's where the most data points are. So when you draw a line of best fit, it's gonna look something like that. That's what fits it the best, which means that our shape is middle or even. So if I were to ask you what best describes the shape of the data, you would say that it is in the middle, because it's in the middle of our number line. It's in the middle of this line plot. You could hear it say it is clustered in the middle, which just means that it's grouped in the middle. Or you could say that it's even, which means that it's evenly dispersed on both sides with a little bit extra in the middle. So that's the shape of our first one. If we look down here at number 2, we've got another shape happening. So if we're dealing with this shape, we would say that it is clustered, which means it's grouped to the left or to the right. What would you say? Well, the most data is to the left. So in this case, our data is going to be clustered to the left. But if we look at number 3, it's very similar, but instead of being clustered to the left, it's actually clustered to the right. Okay, so you're gonna see this shape when it's clustered to only one side or the other, either the left or the right. It will be a very clear incline or decline. Think about it like a hill. If it's to the left, you're gonna be running down the hill, but if it's clustered to the right, you're gonna be running up the hill. And then if we look at number 4 is a little bit different. Looking at the line plot for number 4, if you notice, we've got a lot of data on both ends. So with this type of line plot, you would categorize this shape, and I'll draw the line of best fit for you. The line of best fit here makes a shape where it's clustered at both ends, which means that there's a group at both ends. Okay, so that would be what the shape is talking about. The shape is literally what shape that this data on our line plot is making. If I ask you a question about the shape, it's gonna sound something like, what best describes the shape of the data? And you would use your chart to help you and figure out what the shape is. So moving on to the second category in our chart, the center. So you've heard me talk before about the center of the data. We actually learned a couple different ways to measure the center of data. We have talked about the mean, the median. We've also talked about the mode, But in this case, when we're talking about center, we're really focusing on the mean or the median. And really what that means is that we are going to try to determine, based on the shape, if the measure of center, if the center of our data is best described with the mean or the median. Okay, so if our if our line plot has a middle or even shape, which we said was number 1, then that means that the center of our data will either be the mean or the median. It could be either. And that will be an answer choice. You're not going to have to just assume either the mean or the median. Mean or median will be one answer choice as itself. Okay? So then going down to the clustered left or right. We figured out that numbers 2 and 3 are our clustered left and our clustered right. So if you have a line plot that is clustered left or clustered right, then the best measure of center is going to be the median. So I'm actually going to write median so that we know what we're talking about. So that means that the center of our data, the best way to describe the center of our data is going to be the median, okay? Now on the last one, number 4, we discussed is clustered at both ends, which means there's a big group at both ends of our data. The best way to describe the center or the middle of the data for being clustered at both ends would be the mean. And I'll write that right here. So remember, when we're talking about the center, we're talking about the best way to describe the center of the data, the middle of the data. And if I were to give you a question on it, it would sound something like, what measurement best describes the center of the data? The word center will literally be in the question, and these will be your answer choices. That's why this chart is so awesome. It goes straight across. So if it's middle or even, then it's mean or median and IQR, which we'll get to in a second. If it's clustered left or right, it's a median and it's IQR. If it's clustered at both ends, it's going to be mean and it's going to be range, okay? So you follow the line of the chart. It goes with it. So, you notice we've got one more, and it's talking about variability. That's a pretty big word, and I have talked about it before, but variability basically just means how much difference is in this data. How variable is it? How many different numbers do we have? And how large is that set of numbers? So when we're talking about variability, same thing, we're going to go straight across our chart. If we're dealing with the middle or even, the best way that we can talk about the variability, the best way to describe the variability would be with the IQR, which if you don't remember is the interquartile range. That's when we subtract Q2 minus Q1. So I'll actually write that. Right there. Perfect. So if we're dealing with middle or even, which is number 1, then the best way to describe the variability would be with the IQR. Now, if we're clustered left or right, like number 2 and number 3, then you would use also the IQR. So again, just following our chart, the best measure of variability there would be the IQR as well. And then last but not least, the best measure of variability, the best way to describe the variability, if it is clustered at both ends, so number 4, that's actually where it changes. It would be the range. which the range is the highest number minus the lowest number, which in this case, we've got 30 and 5, so that would be 25. Excuse me. So that is how we talk about the line of best fit. That is how we read our chart. You just follow it straight down the line, guys. The most important thing for you to understand, though, is knowing the difference between the shapes and being able to identify them in the different graphs. So that is line of best fit. And if you need to rewatch this video, please do so.